Welcome to the Xbox Dadcast. I am Bon Diesel, aka Morgan. This is the podcast about the Xbox and the upcoming Series X, specifically from the eyes of a casual gaming dad. I myself am a Xbox fanboy, PC casual enthusiast, Division 2 podcaster, husband to a lovely wife, and father to an adorable daughter. The first thing I'll throw out there is, if you would, please share this podcast with anyone you think who would enjoy it. Follow me over on Twitter at Xbox Dadcast, and you can share this lovely podcast with anyone on basically any major platform right now. If there's any platforms you would like me to add, please feel free to let me know. Okay, this week we are going to talk about the Xbox Series X event, maybe some more announcements and kind of some speculation with what. This week we will talk about the Xbox Series X gameplay event that will come next week. We'll be talking about the initiative and what they may be doing, some new Game Pass stuff. And then a little speculation about delays, exclusives, and 2K modes. So we will jump right in to the announcement that we got yesterday. I'm recording this on a Friday, or May 1st. And we found out that on May 7th, less than a week from now, at 11 a.m. Eastern Time for the US, we're going to get a gameplay event for the Xbox Series X, as far as I know, the first one. So this will be our first glimpse into some gameplay. The one game that is confirmed currently that's going to be shown on that is actually the new Assassin's Creed game, which I am kind of excited about. Not necessarily because of the game. As a Division 2 podcaster and as a former, or I guess technically current, Ubisoft star player, obviously I have some allegiances there, kind of. Assassin's Creed games I've always enjoyed to a point. I really liked Odyssey and Origins. Odyssey was just way too long for me, so I'm hoping that maybe they shorten it up a bit with this new game. I doubt it. But regardless of all of that, I am really excited to finally get some hardware, shown. We're gonna see what games look like on the Xbox Series X. Assassin's Creed, a new one being on that, is a good example. That Odyssey looks great. Odyssey was a really pretty game, so hopefully they can give us some indication of just the differences in what they can do. The big thing with this gameplay reveal is going to be that things like 60 or 120 FPS and even 4K is hard to demonstrate on like a YouTube video, because unless you are running 4K 60 FPS bitrate through YouTube, which I don't even think they have. As far as I know, they only have 1080p 4K or 1080p 60 FPS. So it's going to become one of those things that until you see it, you won't really understand how much better it is. I'm not a super fanatic about all my games have to be 60 FPS or more. I'm going to run them at 1080p. I'm talking about PC games. 1080p for 140 FPS. Like, yeah, I mean that's great if you have the ability to do that. I don't. I have 60 FPS monitors, and to me it's just fine. But what I really think is going to be lost on people is if you've only played on consoles and you've only played 30 FPS games for the most part, when you get to play on these new systems, it's going to be a big difference, and that may not come over super clearly in this coming event. But when I think people get their hands on it, as well as they've talked about this new controller technology that's lower latency and things like that. I think people are going to be surprised. So we know we have Assassin's Creed. Valhalla will be one of the featured games, and that's all we know at the moment. So I am expecting that there's going to be more games than that. A lot of discussion I've seen recently has been, or in the last day or so, people have been saying they think this might be a mostly like third-party event, that Xbox may save their own exclusive games for an event that will take place around when E3 would have been, so like mid-June. I'm not too sure about that. I think that Xbox still has quite the advantage when it comes to the information war and the transparency war with Sony. And I really think I said before that the real dagger that Xbox could have would be to show 3 or 4, maybe even 5 exclusive games that look like they're going to be awesome. They need that, even if they aren't all going to be out on release. We know Halo Infinite will be out on release. We don't know about Hellblade 2 quite yet. And any other games, Forza, I think most people are predicting Halo Infinite and Forza 8 will be out on release. But, to know that Hellblade 2 is coming, and, whatever, like the Initiative and some other companies are working on that Xbox has acquired, I know for me, Everwild is a big game that I can't wait to find out more about. So we know Assassin's Creed Valhalla. A lot of people are predicting we're probably going to see Cyberpunk and see like the up-resed version of it. So that could be exciting. I'm curious if we'll see more Ubisoft games other than Assassin's Creed. The new Watch Dogs, it wouldn't surprise me if we see that. The Gods and Monsters or whatever, we'll see if they maybe show that, if that game hasn't been canceled. There was a game that Ubisoft was working on, that was the pirate game. I can't remember off the top of my head, where it was essentially Black Flag but only ships. The Assassin's Creed game. I don't think that game's coming out anymore. I've heard some chatter that game got tested. It was like kind of finished. It got play tested and it just didn't go over very well. I will say that in 2018, when I was an Ubisoft Star player and I got some look at that game, it looked super lame. It was kind of odd that they were even like showcasing the game to us, because it just seems so basic. I was surprised that they were even spending time on it. But so we'll see if there's any other Ubisoft projects. I highly suspect we'll see something from EA, even if it's something as fairly basic as Madden 21. I think it's going to be seeing like an up-res version of that. I know that there's been some debate on what, they talked about like Assassin's Creed will be one of the games that has the smart delivery. I think that there's still some confusion. I was watching the Kind of Funny podcast, the daily podcast yesterday with Blessing and Greg, and I know that they're Sony fans, so I kind of doubt that they're paying super close attention to this stuff. They're kind of waiting for Sony stuff to come out, but I think there's a lot more like confusion about the smart delivery than there needs to be. I think the best way to compare it is to what we already have with the Xbox One, where any games that were designed for the Xbox One or the One S, I guess, they just work. They just play on the Series X. There's no a lot of people don't remember that the 360 and the PS3. The PS3 used with the cell technology or whatever it was called, with their they used a different CPU architecture than computers. I forget exactly what it was called. And the same with the Xbox 360. It was the Easy PC or something like that. But it was basically a non-standard type of CPU. So when games were made for it, That had to be made to work under that infrastructure. And then when they tried to port those games to PCs, they had to make a whole different game. And that's also what happened with games that were cross generation between 360 and Xbox One, because they just didn't work off. It's like the difference. It's how like you can't put diesel in your gasoline car. It's just not what it's designed to run, and that's kind of the same idea. What I don't think people realize is that with PlayStation 4 to 5 and Xbox One to Series X, I don't think people don't realize that that's not an issue anymore. They are the same architecture. The Xbox One and the PS4 were x86 CPU architecture, which is the same as every single computer that you buy now. So, essentially, they're just little computers because of that. Now, there's some proprietary stuff that makes them a little bit different than your everyday computer, but for all intents and purposes, they're the same, which is why ports to PC now, they are hardly even like ports anymore, because really the console version of the game just has set in stone graphical settings, where the PC ports don't, because everyone has a different kind of PC. And then what happened with the Xbox One X was, they took that base version of the game and the base settings that were locked in, and developers that made a Xbox One X enhanced patch for their games. My example would be Division 2, and Division 1 actually had one as well. It basically just bumps those settings up. And that's what the Series X is going to be too. I don't think people realize, in some of the discussion during that Kind of Funny podcast, they even talked about, one of the hosts was saying something along the lines of, he thinks there's going to be like new features and stuff like that with Series X. That's not going to happen. It's basically just going to be a graphics patch. If you're a PC user, you know that I believe games like Fallout 4, and even like I think maybe Red Dead Redemption 2 and Grand Theft Auto have released like graphic packs, where if you have a computer who can take advantage of them, it's really, really gorgeous what they can do with those. So I think they're going to announce a bunch of those type of things. I think they have to during this. I think we're going to find, again, I just don't think people are wrapping their minds around that. Any game you're playing on your Xbox One today, day one will work on the Series X. But not all of them will have a Series X enhanced patch, the way that it took a little while for games to get an Xbox One X enhancement. Now, what's going to change is in 2-ish years, when they start making Xbox Series X exclusive games and PS5 exclusive, next gen exclusive, where they don't the games don't have to run on the Xbox One or the PS4 anymore, where they can go all in and use specifically like this game is designed to be played with an SSD, because all the games for the next year or two are going to have to work with an SSD or an old hard drive, which is going to be a big deal. That's going to be a big difference. So, I assume developers are just now, or in the last year or two, have started developing games just for the next gen systems, but we aren't going to see those for at least 2 or 3 years, I think. And then the last thing, what we may see from the Xbox studios, I mean, I'm assuming we'll at least get some kind of hint what the initiative is doing. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. I'm really hoping that we see something from Obsidian. I'm hoping that we see, like I said before, I would love to see more about Everwild. I would love to see Hellblade 2. I mean, if they drop some information that like Hellblade 2 is going to be on release, that would be a pretty big deal, at least in my opinion. So, and then, we may find out some other things. We still don't know about the pricing and the release date. I don't think we're going to get those on the 7th. I think that's going to come in June or maybe even July, depending on when they do this. And I think most people are predicting it's probably going to release in November, maybe October. I've seen people predict maybe even earlier than that, but I'm not going to, especially not with the current situation that's going on. I assume that it seems like China is getting their production back like kind of now, and that they probably won't be quite ready by the time to do like a August or a September release. That's probably not going to happen. And I don't think we're going to get pricing information or release date yet. What we could get next week, though, are if there's some new features or if there's features that they haven't really talked about quite yet. I think that we've pretty much gotten everything that the Xbox is going to be bringing to the table. Whether it's the smart delivery or the ray tracing or the ray tracing sound system, the controllers and the kind of haptic feedback changes that they've made. The really fast, the low latency controllers and stuff. I think we're waiting for price and release date. And then there's that kind of hanging idea of the Series S or the Lockhart and whether or not we'll hear about that. I don't think that's going to be available at release, especially with the craziness going on right now. I think if we see a Series S, a lower tier, next gen Xbox, I think it would be at the earliest later in the holiday season and potentially even next spring or next fall. That they would kind of let the Series X ride and be the star for a while, and then maybe they would release a different one, but we'll have to wait and see. I'm super excited about that event. I can't wait to see some like actual gameplay. It's going to give us something to talk about here on this podcast. But more than anything, it's getting us a little bit closer to that pre-order. I've already talked to the wifey. I said, hey, this is my one big purchase for the year that she'll know about. And that's, I'm excited to do that. And I'm going to be pre-ordering the system. For sure. I really hope they have like a first, like a pre-order bonus of some type or some unique system or controller that comes with it or something. I've got the Xbox One X Scorpio sitting in front of me, and I'll actually probably be selling that. If I get real crazy, maybe I'll give it away as part of this podcast. We'll have to wait and see. But that will be finding a new home because I don't need both. And I'm not super worried about collecting the Scorpio. And maybe I can give it to someone who does care more about that. Okay, so the second topic here is just a fairly quick one, but I think that there's a lot of anticipation about what the initiative is working on. After kind of reading up on that studio and the intent of bringing them in and who they've been stacking it with, I really think the idea is for them to be almost like Xbox's like Naughty Dog, right? Now, obviously, from a like workplace standpoint and all of that, I really hope that Xbox is really focusing on making sure that their first-party studios are treating their employees correctly and things like that. And we all know that we had the big Last of Us 2 leak in this week, and a lot of that, that's being blamed on bad treatment of employees and a frustrated employee who decided to go and essentially spoil that entire game to everyone. I don't really support doing things like that. But from an employee's point of view, maybe they feel like just because Jason Schreier writes a few articles about their plight and nothing's really changing, they have to take big steps or big leaps to be heard or to show people the impact. I think that blows. So I really hope that all of these studios that Xbox has been vacuuming up, that there's a real focus on culture there. As someone who's fairly in touch with Ubisoft and has spoken to and gets to talk to a lot of people who worked there, while they could make better games, they could. A personal favorite of mine, Division 2, is a game that it's a franchise that a lot of people feel like has been kind of held back to a point. But it's still a good game, and Ubisoft still makes a lot of really great games, and it seems like they make those games while treating their employees really well. So would it be cool if they could make their games that 10-15% better than they are? Great, sure, but at the expense of working people to death and making people hate their jobs and their lives. Maybe that's just the reality that we're dealing with. Or maybe I'm just a shill and I don't have a good perspective on it. feel free to let me know what you think. I'm happy to hear it. The last thing here is there's some new games on Game Pass. I try to at least try one of those out every time there's new ones. This time I tried out Streets of Rage 4. It's kind of an old school arcadey, side-scrolling punch 'em up game. It's a lot of fun. I'm sure I played the old ones. This is a very old franchise. I'm sure I played the old ones. I just don't remember it. And I will say that I played this for about an hour, 2 hours maybe. And had it's fun. It's hard. I even played on the normal mode, which there's 2 or 3 difficulties above that. I may end up trying to play it again on easy mode, which is the lowest level, because even at the normal level, your lives run out quick, and it's challenging. At least for me, it's not really my genre of choice. So definitely a challenge if you have Xbox Game Pass. Check it out. It's a really cool looking game. The stylization of it is very neat. Okay, let's move on to some speculation and so on. So talking about Xbox being delayed and the release date, it's like a weird topic to go over because there's not a release date, so it technically can't be delayed. I don't see any chance that they're gonna push the release of the Series X to 2021. I think they're set, and I think they should be. I think that's a good thing, even if they have to release maybe in like lower release numbers. Even though Phil Spencer and everyone involved seems like very for sure that that they're fine. So we'll see how that plays out. As for its actual timing, I kind of said before, I'm guessing November at some point. October would be cool. I mean, I would like to have it in July, but I'm going to go ahead and guess that that's not going to happen. Something I'm kind of curious about, and we don't really know anything because there's no release dates yet. But with the way that we're seeing, like in the Assassin's Creed trailer, the Xbox Series X got the marketing deal. Obviously, it's being featured as a Xbox Series X game. What I'm curious about is that, and we don't know this yet, I suspect it would be news, but if there's a potential that Microsoft has put up some cash to potentially get the next gen upgrades on the Series X early or before PS5. Just the way that Microsoft has been promoting Cyberpunk and now Assassin's Creed, I could see a world where, obviously they can't make those games Xbox exclusives. Those third parties would never leave that money behind. But they could potentially say, pay one of those companies and say, hey, we want the next gen upgrade exclusive for Series X players for the first 6 months. So PS5 players would still get these games, but they would have to play them on like the old tech until that expiration. I don't know. I'm speculating that 100%. I don't really think that's going to happen. If it did, I would applaud Microsoft for making moves. Sony has been shameless about doing that same type of thing this gen and last gen, with especially games like Call of Duty and stuff, and having whole modes that are exclusive to just their system or getting the game early, so on and so forth. So we'll see. I would like to see that move just because I would like to see Microsoft get aggressive. But from like a player standpoint, I kind of hate that kind of stuff because it just, we should all get the games at the same time, right? So we'll have to see what happens there. Then the final little thing here is I threw out a question to Phil Spencer on Twitter. Not get an answer. I am not as lucky as some of the other people who he will randomly respond to. But what I asked was if there's a potential that the Series X could offer like the One X offers where you can run it at 1080p or 4K. And then some of the games individually will let you choose like a performance mode or a graphics mode. So what that essentially does is if you're in performance mode, it puts the signal out. Your resolution is 1080p, but it can run at a much higher and a much steadier FPS. Or if you do like the graphics mode, it'll do 4K. 4K. I mean, it's 4K, but it's not like 4K, but it still looks cool. But you're gonna be 30 FPS if you're lucky with a lot of games. What I'm hoping is that potentially for Series X, I'm assuming it's just gonna be 4K standard, and that maybe you're gonna be able to choose between like 60 FPS, or maybe some games will let you choose 120 if you have the monitor to support it. What I would actually love is for them to take a nod from the PC community and also provide a 2K option or a 1440p. I know for me, when I'm playing video games on my PC, I'm a 1440p guy because the way my rig is set up, I can run 1440p at 60 FPS on almost anything that's out right now with like medium to high video settings. Which is around what I assume the Series X is going to run games at compared to the PC counterpart. Is probably like in the middle of medium and high graphic setting. And so if you can pick 1440p and get the benefit of 2K graphics, but also be able to hit 60 FPS, maybe even 120 on more games than the 4K mode, I would actually really love that. And I would highly encourage them to at least consider that with my tiny squeaky little mouse voice in this community. Okay, so I'm going to jump into our last segment here, which is a listener question from Shami Soul on Discord. If you want to ask your own questions, check out my Discord, check out my Twitter, which is @BondDiesel, check out the podcast Twitter, which is at Xbox Dadcast. You can even throw questions into the YouTube comments. I'm happy to answer them there. Or any other way you can get a hold of me. Let me know. I'm happy to answer them. So Shami says, huge event coming for third-party devs. Aside from Valhalla, what other games do you wish to see there? And what are your expectations? So I kind of covered that, but what I would really like to see is Halo Infinite, like actual gameplay. Obviously the Assassin's Creed gameplay. I would like to see something more from Hellblade, maybe some gameplay of Hellblade. I would like to be surprised by something. I would like them to show hopefully an Xbox studio game. I really don't care which one it is, but for them to be like, hey, look at this. This is pretty cool, you know? And they'll probably show Gears of War 5 enhanced. I think that might actually be confirmed. I didn't see it, but I feel like I heard that or read that somewhere. I would love to see Ubisoft actually have their own segment, which I think is what may happen. They may be like, oh, Ubisoft, Xbox Series X. And it'll be like Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs. I would personally love to see them give some nod to Division 2, that there's going to be a Series X upgrade for that. That's a very selfish thing. And the way Division 2 is going right now, I may not even be playing it when the new system comes out. We'll have to wait and see. I'm sure I will be. Don't worry. If you come from that podcast, don't worry. I'm probably not going anywhere. But like I said before, I don't think we're getting release date. I don't think we're getting price. We'll maybe get a nod to some new features. We'll maybe get a nod to the Lockhart. But both of those things I would say are big fat maybes. So thank you, Shami, for that question. I do very much appreciate it. And with that, I'm going to wrap this baby up. So please take a moment to rate this podcast on whatever platform you may be listening on. If you want to support this podcast or my other projects, please check out patreon.com/theechocast. I am BondDiesel on Twitch, where I am planning on starting to stream again on the 3rd on this coming Sunday. I don't know what I'm going to play. Probably going to be Division 2, but we may jump onto some other stuff as well. Yeah, you can catch me on Twitter at BondDiesel or at Xbox Dadcast. And that's what I have. So until the next time we meet, be good and game on.